Welcome to the Better Workday Podcast with your host, Niamh Moynihan. So I've managed to put in place a morning routine that really works for me, and I'm starting my workday with the right amount of energy and motivation. But I find once I get down to work, I'm not as productive as I thought I would be. And by the middle of the day or the middle of the week, I've lost my motivation and I'm just tired. Niamh, what can I do to keep my energy and motivation flowing throughout my day?
Hello, and welcome back to the Better Workday Podcast. How are you? Last week, we spoke about how to improve your morning routine. And in this episode, I want to extend on that and take a look at how to find balance in the day overall so that you get the job done, you achieve what you want to do, but you still have enough energy left at the end of the day. I think we've all experienced those weeks where you start the week off with a huge amount of energy, you go full steam, and then by Wednesday, you feel like it should be Friday, and the rest of the week suffers. So, what I want to do is give you some ideas to find balance over the course of the days and weeks so that we can consistently bring our best selves to work. And best means different things on different days. I always say if you try to do better than your best, you're going to end up burning out. Because it's not just about the time that you have available, it's also about how much energy you have, what things you have to pay attention to, whether that's at work or at home. And so there's a whole range of factors that influence what your best can look like. So what we want to do is make sure that we are working with what we have, that we're making the most of the energy and the time and the headspace that we have, and that we're not running ourselves down at the start of the week or on one particular day to the detriment of the days to come. And the first thing I'd like to cover on this topic is the fact that your workday is not meant to be a consistent level of high performance or high productivity. I think there's an illusion sometimes that high performance people are super productive all day long, from the minute that they log into work in the morning until the minute they clock off in the evening. And that's not the case. It's very hard to sustain a high level of performance without any dip. And so our days and our weeks look more like a wave where there's peaks and troughs where we've got high activity, high energy, and then that's balanced with periods of rest or low activity. And the thing is, if you try to sustain high energy, high performance all day long, you're going to end up feeling exhausted. You're going to end up feeling like you've done a week's work in a morning. And that's going to have a negative ripple effect on the rest of your day and on the rest of your week. And on the other hand, if you have a flat line of boring, monotonous work that's not challenging, you're going to feel probably tired, bored, lethargic, and not motivated. So the key is to find that balance, that wave during the day. And it really does depend on so many different factors: what you do, where you work, the nature of your company, all those things. And they're the kind of things I want to dig into now so that maybe you can start creating a flow to your day that really suits your work and your environment. And above all else, before we get into any of those factors, you have to put in the non-negotiable, which is your breaks. And I want to stop and spend a little bit of time on the topic of breaks before we move on, because it's so important. I believe that if you can incorporate a few micro breaks into your day, it can make a huge difference. So a micro break can be up to 10 minutes long, it can be as short as 2 minutes, and it's an opportunity for you to take a break from work. And here are just a few scenarios where it might be helpful. If you are having a lot of different conversations with a lot of people during the day, that might be in meetings or could even be in email or on Teams or Slack. You have to switch context for every single conversation, and that can be quite tiring. So to take a minute or two in between those conversations allows you to recharge and to refocus and to return back to the next conversation with more intention. If you are working on a big piece of work and you find that you are starting to get distracted or that you are feeling that you want to move on to a different task, that's a cue to take a small break to give your brain a chance to rest and come back. And it doesn't have to be, in this case, a break from work altogether. It could just be switching to a lower demand task for a few moments and allowing yourself a chance to recharge in that way. And also, if you just have a lot going on your desktop, so I'm talking about those browsers with 100 tabs open, there's lots of notes on the notebooks, there's lots of things to do, that can be very overwhelming. And taking, again, just a minute or two to step back really allows you to regain focus and regain control over your day. And I don't expect you to do anything too crazy on these 2 minutes or up to 10 minutes, depending on how much time you have. It's just to even push back from your desk and gaze at something far in the distance. Just take a moment out. I always say that what I try to do is take a minute to step into the corridor, the virtual corridor, corridor of my mind. Take a minute to step into the corridor and look at what's ahead and all the different doors that are there, which are all the different demands on your day, and intentionally step into the next room as opposed to being pulled from one to the next. So really taking those moments to pause and to decide on your next action and give yourself a chance to recalibrate or reset is really, really important. So in every routine for the day, for the week, for the month, I want breaks to be the foundation. They should be the outline, the structure that everything else then fits in around, because they really do help you to perform your best and to prevent burning out and feeling exhausted, which is very, very important. And once you have your breaks covered, it's time to look at how you design the rest of your day based on the nature of your job. So here are some of the different factors you might consider, and this isn't an extensive list, it's just to get you started. So the first is, how responsive is your role versus how planned can it be? There are some people who can tell for the next week, 2 week, or even 3 weeks what their days and weeks look like for the most part. So you could maybe plan for 50-60% of your day, which is a lot. And there are other people, for example, if you work in customer success or customer service, your role is very responsive. So it really depends on what's coming into your mailbox that day. And knowing which kind of job you have is the first step in designing a routine that works for you. Because there's no point you following all the time management and productivity advice for a role that has a high degree of planning in advance if your role is really responsive, and vice versa. So, for example, if you have a reactive day, right? So you're really responding to other people. What I suggest you do is allow a minimum amount of time that you need to spend on key activities so that they don't get lost in it. Okay. So you might say, my job is really responsive, but I need at least 1 hour a day to do this task. And that task could be something like a project you're involved in, some learning that you're doing, some other development. Okay. So you set a minimum amount of time that you're going to work on planned activity. And then on the other side, if your role is quite planned or structured, you have to allow time for I don't know what yet. Okay, so it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to go as planned. We all know this. You've never had the perfect work day. I've yet to meet someone who has had a day that's gone without a single hiccup. So what we want to do is allow buffer time for I don't know what yet. And maybe a half an hour or an hour so that you don't over plan, over schedule, overpack your day. And so that's the first thing that you can look at. Do you need to plan in time for planned events, for things that you know you must do, or do you actually need to plan in time for I don't know what yet? And the second thing to consider then is what kind of work are you doing? And this will vary between really strategic work and tactical work. And your work will probably fall somewhere in the middle of that, okay? So strategic is things like long-term planning, and then tactical is day-to-day operations, updating a spreadsheet, filing a report, updating the system, those kind of things, right? And what I'd suggest is if you have some strategic work to do, try to schedule that for a time of the day or a day of the week that you're going to have a lot of energy, that you're going to be able to pay attention to it. So take a look at the rest of your calendar and see where that works best. And then for the tactical work, do your best to try and group similar tasks together if you can, and make sure that you're allowing for lots of breaks, because that work can actually be quite draining and can be quite repetitive. So you need to shake things up a little bit. So doing a big set of one type of task for a while and then switching it up to do another type of task will bring in some variety in the day and also keep you refreshed. So things like that, taking a look at what your day and weeks looks like So you are probably going to have a mix of strategic and tactical work, and it's all about recognizing that and seeing how that can flow across the day. And of course, if you have meetings, they have to go in there as well. But meetings are a whole other topic. Now, the next part that you'd have to look at with that then is the kind of work that you do and how long your work takes. So over the years, I've done lots of different jobs now at this stage, which is great actually. And one thing I'll say to you is I worked in some jobs where a task would take me 20 minutes on average and I get loads of them done in the day. And others take an hour and I get significantly less of them done in a day. And we rarely, I think, stop to consider how long our work takes and, knowing that how we should plan across the week. So really take a look at the type of task you're doing and then how long it takes to actually do them and see can you reschedule or reshuffle your day so that you're making the most out of the time so that you're not getting into something and finding that you can't finish it or that you are constantly finishing your tasks early and because you haven't decided what to do next you just end up procrastinating and doing work for the sake of work. So it works both ways actually. And what I do is I have a time tracker. So I've tracked my time for a long time now at this stage. And every day, actually, I bucket my time and I see where I'm spending my time. And it really allows me to take a look then and plan my week realistically. Now, this time tracker is for me. I don't share it with anyone else. If you choose to track your time, it's for you. You don't need to share it with anyone else. But it's a great way for you to see how long your work really takes. And then you're better able to plan your day, plan your week around it. And the next part for me then is to consider in the type of work that do you do a lot of solo work or a lot of work with others? So I'm a big fan of reading different productivity books and books on time management. And sometimes it strikes me that it seems to be for people who do a lot of solo work. So they can do the work on their own without much interaction with others. But in reality, a lot of you probably work in a team. There's other people that you have to deal with. You're waiting on something from someone, you have to deliver something to somebody else. And that really creates a different dynamic for the day because you're not working in just your bubble. All of their days are also impacting your day. And this kind of goes back to the I don't know what yet and the buffer time. So if you have solo work, I think you can probably plan your day a little bit better. If you work in a highly collaborative environment, I just encourage you to allow the flexibility of not knowing what's happening on other people's desks, giving yourself that space for the unexpected so that when it does arise, then that you can handle it as opposed to, again, trying to over plan. Okay. And really kind of taking a look at the conversations and the relationships that you have with those people and seeing can you work better together to have a smoother day, to have a smoother week. Okay. This kind of links in then again with meetings. I'm not going to touch on it too much, but if you're in a highly collaborative role and if you have a lot of meetings, maybe taking a look at whether there are the same people in lots of different meetings and if there's a way that you can change that and maybe make the most out of the time in a different way. So combining meetings or breaking other ones out into smaller sessions, things like that. And all of this has a play on your day. And on the other hand, if you are mainly a solo worker, make sure that you plan check ins or conversations or meetings with other people because otherwise, well, work can get a bit lonely. I often have found over the last number of years, moving from being an employee to being self employed, that there were days when I spoke to nobody. And that's fine every now and again, but it does have an impact on your well being over time. So if you are a solo worker, take steps to make sure that you do have connection, that you do have conversations with other people, please, because it's not nice to always be working on your own. So these are just some of the factors you'd be considering. Okay, so what's the nature of your work? Is it responsive versus highly planned? Is it strategic or tactical? What kind of work do you do? How long does it take? Who do you have to work with? And you can see now that my daily routine or my weekly routine won't look the same as yours. And some people will have the same routine every weekday. Others will find that it follows a monthly cycle, and others will find that it follows a quarterly cycle. And that's fine. It's just about recognizing it so that you can then put the other measures in place outside of your workday to support it. And here's where we look at, what happens before and after work. If your work day is busy, then obviously you're going to feel the effect of that after work, and you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself in different ways, such as eating well and moving and getting the support that you need. And really kind of winding down after work is key here, so that you're not bringing work with you. I always say that you can work a long day, and if you finish when you finish, as in you're not thinking about work after you finish, you'll be in much better position than if you work a 6-hour day and for the rest of the evening you're still thinking about work and you're still lying in bed worried about work. Okay, it's not always about the amount of hours we work. Often it's about how long we spend thinking and pondering work outside of those hours that can have an impact on our well-being. So do take a look at your life overall and see if your work is supporting your life, and also if your lifestyle is supporting your working week. And there might be changes that you'd make during different times of the month or quarter, as I said, to improve that. With all this in mind, I think it's important to call out the fact that designing your daily routine at work depends on how much autonomy you have over your working day. I do know that some people are required to, log in on the clock at a specific time. They've got very, very strict KPIs and metrics that they have to meet every single day. It's very, very task driven, low level of autonomy, and you're not going to be able to make as many changes to your day as if you had more flexibility and more control over your work. And look, that just depends on the kind of work that you do. But what I would say is, regardless of the level of autonomy you have over the work itself, you can decide what to do on your break. You can decide what to do before work. You can decide what to do after work. You can decide how you show up in the task. So even if you have a highly structured day and you have to follow, a certain set of instructions and you have to do things in a particular way, you can still choose, for example, not to multitask. You can still choose to leave the other tabs closed on the browser. You can still choose not to check your phone so that you're not getting distracted and getting overwhelmed with other things. So even in those roles, there are changes you can make. So I do want to leave you with an exercise, a bit of homework, we'll say, for this week. And here are 3 things that I like you to do. So it's 3 steps. So step 1, I want you to evaluate your current daily and weekly routine. That can be as simple as, from today for the next couple of days, jotting down what you're doing, when you're doing it, how well it's working, and just take some notes. It doesn't have to be fancy, and nobody has to see it except for you. And then I want you just to pick one change, one thing that you're going to do differently. Do that for a week and evaluate whether or not it's improving your workday. Because there is always something that you can do. Last week we looked at the morning. Today we're looking at the day or the week overall. And these small changes, they may seem not that much at the start, but once you embed them and implement them day after day after day, they do create a lovely positive ripple effect. So I do hope that you take that action. I hope you found this episode helpful. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to do a digital declutter at work. So I hope to have you back for that. Please share this episode with a colleague or a friend who you think would find it helpful. And until next time, stay well and have a better workday.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode. The Better Workday podcast is about helping you have a better workday. So we'd love to hear your thoughts and questions. You can find our social media details as well as any references from this episode in the show notes.